So today is a very exciting and special day. I'm so excited to be here with Kim Beauvais, who is the Executive Vice President, Human Resources and Business Operations for Fox Sports. Kim, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me today.
We are going to have, an interesting and important conversation, especially as we're talking about this, about ready to get into the second half of the year, on resilience and the importance and how to own our power, especially being, women in the workplace, and maybe even specifically for a women in media. But I have an idea that some of what you're going to share is going to be universal advice. And before we jump in, though, I thought I would ask, was there a person or a situation or something that really inspired you to really climb the ranks and become an expert and leader in your field?
It's a great question, and I think everybody has somebody or something that has happened to them early on to inspire them. And for me, it was more about my family, specifically my mom growing up, who was a teacher, high school math teacher, and my dad was a pilot growing up, and so. Between them and my grandparents, my brother, the neighborhood we lived in, there was not we were not allowed to say can't in our house, and that stuck with me, and it became kind of a joke with my brother and I. So even small things, right? Like if it was like go pick up your laundry or something, and we would say we can't right now. My mom would always say we don't say that word in our house. You can say I don't want to, which also is wrong, but that was the theme throughout everything that we did. So if school was hard, and we would get frustrated, I would get frustrated with a problem or homework or whatever it is, and say I can't do this. We would always come back to can't's not allowed in this house, and so. Kind of that stuck with me throughout high school into college, and college was hard. I played um, Division I soccer at Valparaiso. That's why I went there, and it was hard. And being a college athlete was difficult. And there were a lot of moments where I can't do this, and it always came back to you can. What are the obstacles getting in your way to do it? And so then it became okay, I can do this. How do I do it? Or maybe I don't want to do it, and that's okay too. But it was never a lack of being able to. And so that was ingrained in me from very early on. And I think I just took that into the workforce. And so being in sports, I definitely was one of very few women at all of the jobs I've been at in the room, but that was never something that held me back. It was never I can't do this because I'm a woman. It was okay, I am a woman, I can do this. How do I get it done? And so kind of fast forward all of these years, one of the big themes that my team and I talk about all the time, we call ourselves Team CanDo. And
Mhm.
so that also is a big joke, hashtag can do on a lot of our Slack messages. Um, and that really isn't about just getting it done. It's if there is something set in front of us, we can do it. It's just how do you problem solve? How do you figure out what the obstacles are and overcome them? And so that could be anything. COVID was probably a really big example of that. When that happened, and again, I'm not alone. I know there's a lot of executives out there that had to deal with this, but it came to me, Kim, how do we deal with this? How do we do this? And I didn't just open up my pandemic manual and said, okay, let's figure out. It was, let's meet and we can figure this out. And we were the first to get sports production back on the air. And it was simply because you get everybody in a room, you figure out what the problem is, and then you solve it as best as you can. And so, kind of going back to your original question, is it really came from my mom, my family, my childhood growing up of can't isn't a word that's allowed in this house. And that's what has stuck with me throughout kind of all of the challenges that I've faced.
I love that so much. And it's making me think, what did I do to, since things stuck with you? I have three kids and I'm thinking of like, did I say something to inspire them or is there something that's so amazing. And so it seems like what your mother really did is she shifted you from can't to curious.
Mm. I think that is absolutely true. That is
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And as long we were talking about before we went live about book titles, that might be another good one. Um, but anyways, and so I might know the answer to this based on the title of the episode, which is the resilience required to own your power. But you know, being the a lot of times the only in a room, and you know, I'm just putting that out there that a lot of times, and I can't speak to your story, but you know, it's not a clear shot from starting in a career and then straight shot to executive vice president. Sometimes there's a little side steps or roadblocks along the way. So, what has really been the mindset that's allowed you to keep going, you know, past some of the frustrations or, you know, mishaps if there were any along the way?
Sure. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of resilience. Mindset and just your mind is a powerful thing. And being able to figure out how to get through those tough times. And there have been plenty. There have been, I mean, you don't rise the ranks, you don't become successful in anything unless you fail at some things, and that's okay. But that is a really hard thing to have happen. If you want something so bad and it doesn't happen the way you want it to happen, that's really hard. And I think resilience is such a skill and a mindset tool that is so important. And really, it's the practice of resilience. It's not just something that you learn one day and you start doing. It definitely is a practice of bouncing back from setbacks, big or small. It's adapting to the challenges, persevering when there is adversity, and doing it with a positive attitude. That doesn't mean that you just glaze over what happened. It's staying focused on whatever that goal is and navigating, and being determined, and flexible. Those are all a lot of the kind of the key words, but that all brings you back to resilience. And I think one of the things that, and as women, that you hear a lot is, well, women are too emotional, right? And I've gotten that a lot. And I think part of resilience is keeping your emotions in check. Um, that doesn't mean you can't be frustrated, sad, angry, the whole litany of emotions. It's being able to recognize what's happening, take some of the emotion out of it, or use it to fuel whatever happens next with those challenges and setbacks. And approaching whatever that obstacle or setback is with optimism and confidence. And if you can do those things and practice those things, then you will get better at being resilient. And resilience is key for anybody, to be able to grow. And it's important to develop that self-awareness. And so the more you practice it, the more self-aware I think you can be. At least I've gotten more self-aware, and it changes your mindset. And so you can recognize what that obstacle is, what that emotion is, and then what is the next step to be resilient through that journey. And I think that helps you gain confidence as well. And so being able to be present at those moments is really important.
Yeah, and I think you brought up something really important about resilience. And, you know, even when working with, like, you think that if you're and working with Olympians or something like that, or maybe when you are in a room with executives, you know, you might think that being resilient, or you get to a certain level and then you don't have the emotions, which first of all, a mentor of mine always says new level, new devil. So everyone, if you're listening and you're like, oh, Kim doesn't need resilience, because no, everybody needs it. But and also you bring up a really important point about resilience, and it doesn't mean that you don't have the emotions, but there's so much wisdom in the emotions. I love that, it's honoring and using it as fuel. That is something that I use in my framework, and I've never heard someone else articulate it. But as an ex-soccer player, you probably learned how that it can be synthesized into literally rocket fuel. So I love that. If just to reiterate and shine a light on that, it's just honoring the emotion, not putting it out or disregarding or making yourself feel bad because you have it or what have you. It's just notice that you have it and kind of make peace with it. And maybe even to Kim's point, seeing if there's wisdom in it.
Absolutely.
Move forward.
It's interesting you say it, because I recently was with Summer Sanders, Olympian swimmer, and you've probably heard this with your work with athletes and Olympians as well. But one of the things I asked her was, when she specifically, had all this pressure on her, and I think this is true at work as well in the corporate world, but when these athletes have all this pressure on them, and the world is looking at them saying kind of, oh my gosh, how can they handle all this pressure? And she said it perfectly. She said, you know, don't feel bad for them. They are right where they want to be. And I think, like, we have to self-reflect sometimes. I have to self-reflect sometimes that there is pressure, and there is fear, and there is frustration at all of those moments. But are you right where you want to be? And the answer should be yes, if it is where you want to be. But for me, like, there are those moments of kind of like looking in the mirror and saying, reevaluating, what are my goals? Am I where I'm supposed to be? What are the obstacles? And using, to your point, that frustration or whatever the emotion is to fuel whatever that next step is. And so I see how, high class athletes translate those same skills are transferable into the corporate world, for sure.
Yeah. And I always say too that whoever is listening, what's important to you is your Olympics, and no less important than your leaders or a true Olympians or what have you. So, and so getting to the topic then, the resilience required to own your power. I love the title because I think we're at a point in history now, not to get philosophical on you, but where it's really important for women to rise and own their power. And it's not always easy. And so, can you share a little bit about why you think it's important, and also maybe some insights and, what are, how to create even greater resilience so you can own your power?
Sure. I think um, there is something to be said about doubting yourself and the importance of going for it anyway. Everybody has had self-doubt at some point in their lives, and I think the trendy way to say it is like imposter syndrome, right? And I think that happens more for women than it does for men. Men will often apply for jobs that are outside of their skill set, and there is no thought of, oh, I may not be qualified for that. Whereas women, I think, look to check all the boxes first and then go for it. And that is definitely a mindset shift, in terms of going for it anyway, even if you may doubt yourself a little bit. And that's part of the practice of resilience, because you may not get it. And that's okay. Do it again. And I've definitely had my fair share of doubts, especially when it comes to taking risks. I work in HR and business operations, so I tend to be very compliant, if you will. But you have to take risks, step outside of your comfort zone. And the important thing to remember is the doubt is just a feeling. It's not a fact. And
Mhm.
so the feeling of being unsure or hesitating, you can't let those doubts hold you back from going after what you want. Taking risks and pushing past is where growth and learning happens. Sometimes that's through failure, and sometimes that's through success. And so you don't know until you do it. So for me, I've learned more from taking those risks than not doing it at all, because that's the importance of resilience for sure. And focusing on my strengths, what I'm passionate about, and the reasons and the thoughts behind why I wanted to go for something. And so I think that's a big piece of it, is people out there try new things, try something that they may be unsure of. Maybe it is going for the job that they're not sure if they're qualified or that they can be successful at, but they really want it. Is taking that leap, going for it, embracing the fact that you have some doubt. And that right there is going to build that resilience that you're going to need going forward. Hopefully you get the job, and then you're really going to need the resilience, because there's going to be more challenges in front of you. So not letting any of those things hold you back, because there's something incredible waiting on the other side of that.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that so much. And it seems like, going back to what you were saying before, that resilience isn't something where you're like, oh, today I'm resilient. It's similar to going into the gym and getting in shape and getting fit. Like, it's a process. And a lot of times, what do you think about doing it when it's in a kind of a safe environment first, and then really practicing it? So I was just listening, for example, I was listening to a podcast this morning on having difficult conversations.
Mm.
And so sometimes those are with people that we care about the most. I'm sure most of us have a conversation that we're like, I probably need to have that. We kind of been putting it off for a little bit, but just in like just doing the things that are hard, and just practicing resilience and thinking about resilience is a practice,
Yep.
not necessarily something that is a label or fixed in time.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've done it for people that have worked for me in the past. I try to do it with my kids, although they don't always listen to me. But is truly, if you're sitting in self doubt or being frustrated or upset that something didn't go exactly as planned, is putting a time frame on it, right? Is saying, okay, I'm gonna be upset about this for an hour, and then I
Mhm.
have to move on. And putting that time frame is like allowing yourself to sit in it. It's allowing yourself to feel it. It's allowing yourself to get through all of the thoughts that are sitting in your head, and then saying, okay, I'm done. I did it. And it's time to put that past me and move forward. And I have to put that into practice with people that work for me, because listen, they fail too. And I'm very happy when they fail forward, right? So being able to sit in it, letting it happen, being in a safe environment where nobody's pointing fingers, it's understanding what happened so that the next time it doesn't, or the next time we do it better. And I've had team members, and even on personal things, it's like, okay, you can be upset. You can be upset for the rest of the afternoon. Totally fine. But tomorrow, I need you to come with a different perspective on it. It's kind of like when you break up with somebody. Although I've been married for almost 20 years, so I don't exactly remember what that's like.
Yeah.
But and you get a pint of ice cream and you watch a really sad movie and you sit in it, and then eventually you're ready to kind of move forward. It's no different. It's putting that's what I try to do in terms of an actual practice, is like putting a time frame around whatever that is, so that you can put it in a box, you can compartmentalize that, and then you can fail forward, you can move forward.
Yeah, I love that. And sometimes journaling, it helps too.
Yeah.
And so when it's open, you can write it down. And then when you close, you're like, okay, done. And when you say, I've heard the term fail forward. So what exactly do you mean by that?
It means that when you When something doesn't go exactly as planned and you consider it a failure or at least not a success, is being able to say, okay, what went wrong so that the next time it doesn't go wrong. Particularly in my world, is you have to be accurate. That's a big thing. So if something was wrong, I'll make a small example on a report. Okay, what happened so that next time that mistake doesn't happen again, because it's probably going to be important as we move forward. So it's being able to recognize the failure, what went wrong, changing it so that next time we can build upon that and it's not a failure anymore. Now it's the next step into whatever that that project or that issue or whatever it is, next step to get that done. And so failing forward means like you're not sitting in the failure. You're not falling back into that self-doubt. It's you're using it as fuel, as we discussed before, to move forward and make something out of whatever that failure is. And so, having a safe space to fail, and then moving forward past that failure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, so what would you offer for someone that conceptually understands that but finds it difficult to do? And typically that happens, maybe when you have some rising leaders or some more, very high performing, promising, amazing leaders that are on their way up, but overthinkers.
Oh, I know a ton of overthinkers, including myself. It happens quite a bit, especially when you're very self-motivated and you want to do great big things. Your mind definitely works on overtime for sure. I think some pieces of it are to have positivity. I think the optimism and the positivity and looking at things as a glass half full is really the first start to that. Having understanding and knowing your own voice, and being able to speak up and use it, is really, really important. And I think a lot of times, especially early on in people's career, you wait for people to ask an opinion. You wait for people to ask for your help, and raising your hand and speaking up and providing input that's impactful. Volunteering for projects that you don't necessarily aren't super familiar with, but you're curious and you're excited about. That's going to lead you to bigger and better things. I think that's really important. Another piece is finding people that you have a great amount of respect for, that are in the same type of values and goals that you have, maybe not even in the same industry, that can give you real honest feedback and that you're willing to hear it. I think creating a circle of trust of people, is really, really important. I still to this day have a circle of people that, when I'm in those moments of reflection or self-doubt or unsure about something, they can give me honest feedback on how I'm handling it, what the success is of it. And those are people that I trust, that have my best interests. And I have people, women in the industry, who I don't always think the same way as, and that's a good thing because they challenge me and I challenge them. And even though we may not always agree on something, I know that if my crown is tilted, they're going to come up and fix it without calling attention to it. And so, finding, a crew of people like that are there to help lift you up, and that you're there to help lift them up. There is enough spots in this world for us all to be successful, in our own way. And so finding that circle is really important.
Yeah, I think so. And also too, I think that circle, at least what I've seen from my coaching vantage point, is that especially women who are strivers, that I don't we probably, if I were to self-label, we like fall into that category. But we're always forward thinking about how do we improve, what's the next thing, that we don't acknowledge the mountains that we've climbed, the big and little things that have been accomplished. And to your point, I think that little board, that really important board of directors can, help tilt our crown, but help shine it,
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what is for everyone listening, do you have a parting word, or what would be a call to action for them to, if they we all have a proverbial tool belt. Can you leave them with something to put in it?
Sure. I think resilience is key, and owning your own power. Lead with joy and purpose. And I think the resilience grounded in self-ownership of what your purpose is going to lead you with the right intentionality into, success. And so, remember that, you are your own CEO of your own brand and your own life. Do all of the things that you're doing with purpose, with optimism, and ultimately resilience.
Yeah, I love that so much. And then, to have your board of directors that by your side as well. And some people actually, I've heard that it can make some people a little bit anxious because they might be like, I don't have those people, or maybe I have one, or I should have more. So just take Kim's word to heart and know that there's other people that would welcome to have you and would love to be there for you. So, Kim, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and for all of your amazing work up to this point. I look forward to following your journey.
Thank you so much for having me.